The viewport of the massive warship showed endless stars, but Admiral Jinnu barely noticed them anymore. He'd seen 1,000 different skies, conquered countless worlds. Today would be no different. At least, that's what he thought as he stood on the bridge of the Divine Order, the most powerful vessel in the Galactic Hegemony's fleet. Myung, his trusted intelligence officer, walked up with a datapad in her hands. "Sir, we've completed our analysis of the third planet in this system." Jinnu turned away from the stars. "And what did you find? Another primitive species ready to join the great family of the hegemony?" "Yes, sir, though they're interesting." Myung pulled up a holographic display showing a blue and green world. "They call themselves humans. They've only just figured out how to split atoms for power and barely made it to their own moon." "Typical," Jinnu sighed. "I suppose they still fight each other over resources." "Actually, sir, that's where it gets odd. They do fight, but they also cooperate. They've started forming larger groups. Some of their nations are already working together on space projects." Hyunsu, the main diplomat, joined the conversation. "I've reviewed their initial communications. Their language is complex, but they seem eager to learn. They keep asking about our technology and our alliance." "Of course they do," Jinnu laughed. "Every young species wants what we have. How long until they accept our protection treaty?" "I'd say 6 months at most," Hyunsu replied. "Their leaders seem smart enough to know they can't resist us. They're even sending ambassadors to meet us." Sunmi, who managed new colonies, looked up from her console. "What about their military? Do they pose any threat?" "Hardly," Myung answered. "Chemical rockets, basic nuclear weapons. They can't even travel between star systems without generational ships. They're probably 1,000 years behind us." Jinnu nodded with satisfaction. The Galactic Hegemony had ruled space for 3 millennia. They'd brought peace to 10,000 worlds by showing them the benefits of joining their alliance. Sure, it meant following hegemony rules and accepting their protection, but it was better than the chaos these primitive species usually lived in. "What's their population?" Jinnu asked. "Around 7 billion, Myung replied. "They're spread across several continents on their homeworld. Surprisingly, they've developed hundreds of different cultures and languages, yet they're starting to work as one species." "Interesting." Jinnu walked closer to the holographic display, studying the planet. "Most species are united by the time they reach space. These humans seem delayed in their development. Or perhaps they value diversity," Donghyuk suggested. He was young for a hegemony officer, recently promoted after showing exceptional tactical skills. "Look at their art, music, and literature. They've created more variety in these areas than some species do in millions of years." "Variety is inefficient," Hyunsu stated firmly. "The hegemony succeeds because we have standard procedures, unified goals. These humans will learn that chaos leads nowhere." Jinnu moved to his command chair. "Prepare the standard first contact package. We'll offer them protection, trade agreements, and technology transfers. In exchange, they'll limit their expansion and accept hegemony oversight." "And if they refuse?" Sunmi asked, though she already knew the answer. "They won't." Jinnu smiled confidently. "They never do. Once they see what we can offer, unlimited energy, faster than light travel, advanced medicine, they'll beg to join us." Taehyun, the communications officer, looked up from his station. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the humans. They're asking if they can send a larger diplomatic team." "Of course they are," Jinnu chuckled. "Grant their request. Let them bring whoever they want. It doesn't matter if they send 1 ambassador or 100. As his crew prepared for the meeting, Jinnu reflected on how smoothly things always went. The hegemony had perfected this process over thousands of years. They offered protection and prosperity in exchange for obedience. Every species eventually saw the wisdom in joining them voluntarily. "Sir," Myung called out, "preliminary scans show the humans have developed some unusual practices. They seem to test their technologies in unexpected ways, often finding solutions we wouldn't consider." "Primitive innovation," Jinnu waved dismissively. "They'll abandon such crude methods once they see our advanced techniques." The bridge hummed, with quiet activity as his officers prepared for what they all assumed would be a routine first contact. None of them suspected that they were about to encounter something the hegemony had never faced before, a species that would change everything. 3 months had passed since first contact, and Sunmi stared at her computer screen with growing confusion. The numbers just didn't add up. As the head of colonial administration, she'd overseen dozens of new species joining the hegemony. It was always the same pattern: contact, negotiation, compliance. But these humans were different. "Genu," she called out as the admiral walked past her office. "I need to show you something." He stepped in, coffee cup in hand. "What's the problem, Sunmi?" "The humans agreed to stay within their solar system, right? No expansion beyond their home territory without our approval." "Yes, that was in the treaty they signed." "Why?" Sunmi pulled up a star map dotted with red markers. "Our scouts keep finding human ships in places they shouldn't be. Look at this, 17 different star systems, all supposedly empty." Genu frowned. "What are their ships doing there?" "That's the strange part. They're not mining or building colonies. They say they're just exploring or doing science. When we ask them to leave, they do. No arguments, no resistance." Genu studied the map. "Maybe they're just curious. Many species want to explore when they first get faster-than-light technology." Before Sunmi could respond, Donghyuk rushed into the office. His usually calm demeanor was completely shattered. "Admiral, you need to see this immediately." "What now?" Donghyuk activated his portable hologram projector. "The humans just returned our fusion engine designs. They said thank you for sharing and gave us these blueprints." Genu looked at the technical drawings floating in the air. Everything seemed normal until he noticed the efficiency ratings. "Wait, these numbers can't be right." "They are," Donghyuk said grimly. "The humans took our fusion technology and somehow improved it by 30% in 3 months." Sunmi felt a chill run down her spine. In 3,000 years of hegemony rule, this had never happened. Subject species learned from them, not the other way around. "It gets worse," Donghyuk continued. "They're sharing these improvements with other species, the Kelthars, the Vorthans, even some of the minor systems." "Why?" Genu asked. "What do they gain from giving away advanced technology?" "I don't know, sir. When we asked their ambassador Junho about it, he just said knowledge grows when shared." Over the following weeks, more strange reports trickled in. Myung, leading the intelligence division since her promotion, brought news that troubled everyone. "Several of our minor member species have requested cultural exchanges with humanity," she reported during a staff meeting. "The Althans want to study human art. The Grixians are interested in their music. The Vorthons want to learn about something called democracy." "Democracy?" Hyunsu looked puzzled. "That's an ancient, inefficient system. Why would anyone want to study that?" "Because the humans make it work," Myung replied. "Somehow they get billions of people to cooperate without central control." Taehyun looked up from his communications console. "There's something else, sir. The humans keep asking unusual questions during our diplomatic meetings." "What kind of questions?" "They want to know how long each species has been in the hegemony, what benefits they get, whether they're happy with the arrangement. They seem more interested in our member species than in what we can offer them." Genu felt uncomfortable with this news. The humans were supposed to be focused on gaining from the relationship, not analyzing their existing alliance structure. "Sir?" Hyunji, the young officer recently assigned to monitor human communications, spoke up. "I've been tracking their internal discussions. They have something they call the net, where they share information instantly across their planet." "Global communication system? Impressive for their technology level," Genu admitted. "It's not just the technology, sir. They use it to coordinate efforts between different groups. When they learned about fusion from us, thousands of their scientists immediately started working on improvements. They share ideas freely, even with people they've never met." "How do they prevent theft of ideas?" Sunmi asked. "They don't seem to care about that," Hyunji replied. They say if everyone has good ideas, everyone benefits. Dong-hyuk shook his head. This goes against everything we know about species development. Competition drives progress, not cooperation. Try telling that to the humans, Mi-young said dryly. They've achieved more in 3 months than most species do in decades. As weeks turned into months, the hegemony's easy confidence began to crack. The humans weren't behaving like any other species they'd encountered. They were too friendly, too helpful, too interested in others' well-being, and most disturbing of all, they were learning. The alarm shattered the quiet morning on the divine order. Jinoo bolted upright from his sleep as red lights flashed throughout his quarters. He'd heard this alarm maybe twice in 20 years of service. Admiral, to the bridge immediately, came Taehyun's urgent voice through the communication system. Jinoo threw on his uniform and ran through the corridors. When he reached the bridge, chaos greeted him. Officers crowded around screens, their voices tense with confusion. "What's happening?" Jinoo demanded. Yoonji looked up from her console, her face pale. "Sir, Patrol Fleet 7 has gone silent. All 12 ships." "Gone silent? You mean destroyed?" "No, sir. Silent. They were patrolling the outer edge of human space when they just stopped responding. No distress signals, no explosion signatures, nothing." Sunmi burst onto the bridge carrying a tablet. "Admiral, we have another problem. The humans are asking for a meeting. They say it's urgent." "About what?" "They didn't say. Their ambassador Junho just sent a message saying, 'We need to talk.'" Before Jinoo could respond, Dong-hyuk called out from the tactical station. "Sir, I'm reading energy signatures from Patrol Fleet 7's last known position. Multiple small craft, moving fast. Ours or theirs, unknown design. But they're heading this way." Jinoo felt his stomach tighten. This wasn't supposed to happen. Earth was supposed to be a simple integration like all the others. The next few hours brought more disturbing news. Yan-Su arrived from the intelligence section with reports that made no sense. "The humans have been busy," he announced grimly. "They've developed something they call adaptive camouflage. Our sensors can barely detect their ships unless they want to be seen." "Impossible," Jinoo protested. "We gave them basic fusion technology. How could they develop stealth systems?" "Working together, apparently. The moment they got our tech, they started a project they called Operation Mirror. Every human scientist, engineer, and mathematician focused on one goal: staying hidden." Mi-young joined the conversation, her expression troubled. "There's more, sir. Our patrol ships aren't destroyed. They're captured. The crews are alive and, well, they're confused." "Confused about what?" "The humans are treating them well. Fed them, gave them comfortable quarters, let them communicate with home, but they're also showing them things." "What things?" "Videos of hegemony activities. Historical records. They seem to be trying to educate our people about our own history." Jinoo felt a headache forming. This was unlike any resistance the hegemony had faced. Most species either accepted their offer or fought back directly. The humans were doing neither. The situation deteriorated over the following weeks. More patrols disappeared, captured without violence. Human ships appeared and vanished like ghosts, always staying just out of reach. "They're not following standard military doctrine," Taehyun reported after analyzing the encounters. "They avoid direct confrontation, hit our supply lines, then disappear before we can respond." "Cowards," Sunmi muttered. "No." Dong-hyuk disagreed thoughtfully. "Smart. They know they can't match our firepower directly, so they're using what they call asymmetric warfare." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means they play by different rules. While we're focused on big battles with massive fleets, they're hitting us 100 different ways. Information warfare, propaganda, targeted raids. They're making us waste resources chasing shadows." Hyunji looked up from her station. "Speaking of propaganda, sir, we have a problem. Several minor hegemony species are questioning why they're fighting humans." "What do you mean?" "The captured crews are sending messages home. They're telling their people that humans treat prisoners well, that they're just defending themselves. Some species are asking why the hegemony is being aggressive toward beings who've done nothing wrong." Jinoo rubbed his temples. "The humans are turning our own people against us. It gets worse, Myung added. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, sharing something they call our story. They're showing the galaxy recordings of hegemony expansion over the centuries. So, we brought peace and order to a chaotic galaxy. That's not how they're telling it, sir. They're calling it conquest. They're showing what happened to species that resisted initially. The room fell silent. Everyone knew that some species had fought the hegemony in the early years. Those species didn't exist anymore. Over the next month, the humans' resistance became more sophisticated. They somehow intercepted hegemony communications, disrupted supply lines, and worst of all, they started talking directly to other species. The MUPO. Fourth Hans want to withdraw from the current operation, Hyunsu reported one morning. They say they won't fight humans anymore. Force them, Jinu ordered. Sir, 3 more species have made similar statements. They're not technically rebelling, just refusing to participate in what they call unprovoked aggression. Jinu stared at the tactical display showing their scattered forces. For the first time in his career, he felt unease creeping into his confidence. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were somehow making the hegemony look like the aggressors in a war they didn't want. And somehow, impossibly, it was working. The war room on the Divine Order felt smaller every day. Maps covered the walls showing a galaxy that was slipping away from hegemony control. Su Jin, who had been promoted to war coordinator after 3 others failed, stood before a gathering of the highest-ranking officers. The Vorthons have officially withdrawn from our alliance, she announced, her voice heavy with defeat. They're the 7th species this month. Jinu couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Vorthons had been loyal members for 2,000 years. On what grounds? They claim the humans have shown them something called a better way. Whatever that means. Sujin pulled up a holographic display showing the galaxy. Large sections were now marked in neutral colors. They're not joining the humans exactly, but they're forming what they call independent partnerships. Minho, the chief strategist who had replaced several predecessors, looked exhausted. Admiral, I've run every simulation I can think of. We can't win this war with conventional methods. Why not? Sunmi demanded. We have superior technology, more ships, more experience. But they have something we don't, Minho explained. Unity. Every human seems to work toward the same goal. When we capture their data, instead of finding military secrets, we find stories. Messages between families, personal journals of soldiers, scientific discoveries shared freely. Dong-hyuk, now promoted to fleet captain, added, Their soldiers don't fight for conquest or glory. They fight to protect what they call universal rights. They genuinely believe all beings should be free to choose their own path. Impossible, Jinu scoffed. Every species fights for territory, resources, power. Not humans, Hyunji said quietly. She'd spent months studying human communications. They fight for ideas. When they capture our people, they don't interrogate them. They ask questions like, Are you happy with your life? And, What would you change if you could? The room fell silent as officers digested this information. Taehyun broke the silence. Sir, we've intercepted more communications. The humans have made contact with 17 more hegemony species. They're not demanding surrender or offering protection, they're just talking. About what? Everything. History, philosophy, science, art. They seem genuinely interested in learning about other cultures, and they share their own culture freely. Myung walked in with a data pad looking troubled. Admiral, you need to see this. The Kelthars aren't just withdrawing from the war. They've formally requested to join what humans are calling the Galactic Federal Council. What's that supposed to be? A voluntary association where each species has equal representation, regardless of size or age. They're promising that every species can maintain their own culture and make their own decisions. Sujin shook her head. It'll never work. Who's going to enforce order? Who's going to make the hard decisions? Apparently they vote on it, Hyunji replied. The humans have something they call democratic processes. They've developed ways for millions of people to make decisions together. Minho pulled up new tactical displays. The situation is worse than we thought. Human technology has advanced exponentially since the war began. They've not only matched our capabilities in many areas, they've surpassed us in others. How is that possible? Genu asked. They share everything with their allies. When the Keltars joined them, they brought their crystal-growing technology. The humans combined it with their adaptive programming and created something entirely new. They call it collaborative innovation. Dongyuk nodded grimly. Our intelligence suggests they have tens of thousands of species working on every problem. While we guard our secrets, they share their knowledge. Over the following weeks, the cascade accelerated. Jisu, managing what remained of their alliances, brought increasingly dire reports. The Althans have announced neutrality, she reported one morning. They say they refuse to fight a war over philosophical differences. Philosophical differences? Genu exploded. This is about galactic order. That's just it, sir. The humans are asking what gives us the right to impose order on others. They're asking questions we've never had to answer. Sunmi looked up from her tablet. Sir, I've been analyzing the pattern. Every species that switches sides mentions the same thing. The humans treated them as equals from the first moment. We treat our member species well, Genu protested. We treat them as members, sir. The humans treat them as partners. There's a difference. The truth hit everyone like a cold wave. For 3,000 years, the hegemony had ruled through benevolent superiority. They offered protection and advancement in exchange for submission. The humans offered something the galaxy had never seen: true equality. Hyansu delivered the final blow. Sir, our deep space monitors have detected something disturbing. The humans aren't just defending themselves anymore. They're actively seeking out oppressed populations throughout the galaxy, and those populations are responding. As Genu looked at the latest maps, he saw the terrible truth. The hegemony wasn't just losing a war, it was losing the idea that had sustained it for millennia. The notion that some species were naturally meant to rule over others was crumbling, and there was no way to stop it. The corridors of the divine order echoed with footsteps that now seemed hollow and purposeless. General Kyungmin walked slowly toward the main council chamber, carrying data that would change everything. His uniform, once a symbol of pride and power, now felt heavy with the weight of defeat. Inside the chamber, the remaining hegemony leadership sat around a table that had once commanded a galaxy. Elder Seung-ho, ancient beyond measure, looked frailer than anyone remembered. His eyes, which had seen the rise of the Great Alliance, now witnessed its end. Tell us, Seung-ho whispered, his voice barely audible. Kyungmin activated the holographic display. Numbers appeared in the air, cold and final. 83% of our member species have either joined the Galactic Federation or declared neutrality. We control 17 star systems. Last month we controlled thousands. Impossible, Sunmi said, though her voice lacked conviction. Humans have done something unprecedented, Kyungmin continued. They haven't conquered anyone. Every species that joined them did so voluntarily. They're not building an empire. They're building something else entirely. Myung, now head of intelligence, added quietly, Our deep scans show construction in the Sol system. Massive projects, but not weapons. They're building what they call cultural centers and research stations, places where different species can work together. Taehyun looked up from his console. Sir, we're receiving a message from the human fleet. Ambassador Junho wants to meet. To demand our surrender, Genu asked. No, sir. He says he wants to talk about the future. Hours later, the leaders of what remained of the hegemony sat across from human representatives. Junho looked tired but determined. His clothes were simple, nothing like the elaborate robes hegemony leaders wore. Beside him sat other humans and, surprisingly, several former hegemony species. We're not here to humiliate you, Junho began. We're here because this war has gone on long enough. You want our surrender, Genu stated coldly. We want peace, replied Mihyun, a human general whose rank insignia were modest compared to hegemony standards. We want all species to choose their own path. Hyunsu, the hegemony historian, spoke for the first time in months. You realize what you're asking? The hegemony has brought order to this galaxy for 3 millennia. Without us, there will be chaos. Will there? Asked Chae-young, another human diplomat. We've been working with 78 species for months. There's no chaos, there's cooperation. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Junho leaned forward. We discovered something in your own archives. Did you know the hegemony began as a rebellion against something called the Eternal Empire? Elder Sungho jerked as if struck. Those records were supposed to be classified. You fought for freedom once, continued Mihyun. You believed that the old ways were wrong, that species deserved better. What happened to that vision? We grew wise, Jinoo replied, but his voice lacked certainty. We learned that order must be maintained. Whose order? Asked Kyungho, a young human who looked barely old enough to be a diplomat. And who decides what order looks like? The questions hung in the air like accusations. Sungho spoke, his voice carrying the weight of ages. What do you want from us? Join us, Junho said simply. Not as subjects, as partners. Bring your knowledge, your culture, your experience. Help us build something better. Better than the hegemony? Sunmi asked skeptically. Better than rule by force, Chae-young replied. Better than might making right. Better than some species commanding while others obey. Dong-hyuk, who had remained silent, finally spoke. How do you maintain order without hierarchy? How do you make decisions with thousands of species? We listen, Mihyun answered. We debate, we vote, we compromise. Is it messy? Yes. Is it slow sometimes? Yes. But it's honest. And if species disagree, then they disagree. But they work it out together instead of having someone impose an answer. Kyungmin looked at the data one more time. The numbers told a story that couldn't be ignored. The hegemony was finished, not because they had been conquered, but because something better had come along. The formal surrender, he said quietly. What are the terms? No terms, Junho replied. No reparations, no punishments, just join us. Help us build this new future together. 3 days later, Jinoo stood on the bridge of the Divine Order as it approached Earth. The planet looked ordinary from space, just another blue world among countless others. But as they came closer, he saw thousands of ships from hundreds of species. Not warships, transport vessels, research stations, diplomatic cruisers. The galaxy's future was being built here, one partnership at a time. As Jinoo prepared to sign the agreement that would end the hegemony and begin something new, he realized something profound. They hadn't lost to superior weapons or tactics. They had lost to an idea that all beings deserved respect, dignity, and choice. And perhaps, just perhaps, that wasn't a defeat at all.